All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday morning, December the 15th, and we are in chapter 13 of the book of Hebrews. And so we are rounding the corner and going to that final leg in the journey and going to close out the book of Hebrews sometime in the next 2 weeks. Good morning, Don, Nona, Jessica. How you doing? Lily, good to have you on. Hope everybody's doing well. Made it through the rainstorm. Yesterday was quite the rain. It was, we actually had water kind of blowing up underneath the doors here at the church because the wind was so strong. And across the street, can't see it, I can see it, but over by Arby's, when the trees blew down. So I was like, I haven't seen that in a long time. That kind of rainstorm and that type of intense wind. So anyway, today is dry and sunny and looking like we're going to have a beautiful day. Good morning, Lucy. Good to have you on. So anyway, hope everybody made it through okay and not too much damage for anybody as far as if you've got trees or anything in your yards that hopefully didn't blow over or anything like that. So anyway, let's talk about today, chapter 13, verses 1 through 7, as we kick off this final leg in the book of Hebrews. And just for a few minutes today, we want to draw attention to what I'm calling or just refer to as the relational currency of empathy. The relational currency of empathy, right? We know currency in terms of money, right? The purchase and the purchase as well as the selling of goods and saying, hey, I'll give you $5 for this and I'll give you $20 for this and you get something in return. When it comes to humanity, I believe one of the primary forms of currency that the Lord really wired us with to exchange trust and exchange loyalty and exchange friendship and exchange just decency with one another is this currency known as empathy. Empathy is when you actually take time to have consideration for another person and put yourself into their life, to put yourself in their shoes for a moment, to walk in their steps for a moment, to consider where they are coming from, to at times just listen and try your best to understand. And when someone feels understood, or at least an attempt is made to help a person feel like they are understood, there's something that takes place deep within the soul because they have come into contact with this relational currency we call empathy, and it pulls them forward. It's magnetic. Like when someone understands you, right? Just think about that. When someone says to you, like, "Oh, I get that," or they've been through something you've been through, or they take time to listen, they're like, they might even say something like, "I don't fully get what you're saying, but I appreciate what you're saying, or I at least value what you're saying because I know for you it means something." There's something within you that kind of like leans in right in that moment because there's empathy. And empathy is a currency of the human soul that sadly we're becoming more and more bankrupt with. I think a part of that happens because of the digital world that we live in, that the way our brains work, and when we're just kind of watching videos and going through different social media feeds, and we got one thing after another, like there's something that there's a disconnect that takes place through the medium of the screen that's different when you have the medium of flesh and blood, right? And so I think a part of that is why people's empathy has kind of diminished, because we don't fully see the other person on the other side of the screen as a person, because there's still a screen between the two. And the people that you actually connect with on a screen, generally there's been some point in time that there's been some relational connection that was physical, with the in person, so to speak. But when empathy is lost, trust is lost, and loyalty is lost, and confusion sets in, and just there's kind of a catastrophic, I think, state of events that take place when empathy is not present. But when empathy is present, it's magnetic, and it helps us better relate with one another. And so I say that because when I start chapter 13, and the author of Hebrews is, I love that. Thank you, Karen, for your long standing empathy. That's very cool. Very cool, Lucy, to write that. But the author of Hebrews is he kind of has went 12 chapters now talking about Jesus and talking about just everything about him being the great high priest, right? Bringing a better word, a better covenant, a better way. But if you kind of look underneath a lot of what the author said, he's really talked about Jesus having empathy, right? That he suffered in every way that we suffer, yet he himself did not sin, but he experienced the fullness of the human experience, and therefore we can come to him with boldness and confidence and approach his throne of grace with that confidence. And we see that he's removed our sins from us, that he's given us a new way, a better way, and all that happened because there was a willingness of Jesus to step into our lives, right? To take on flesh, the author says in the book of John. John says to take on flesh and to dwell among us, or as Eugene Peterson said in his version, to take on flesh and move into the neighborhood, right? And there's empathy as an undercurrent there that is so important because I'm stepping into your life and I'm actually going to, for Jesus, live the life that you live so I can understand it better, but ultimately show you the better way to live in the process. And so all of that has been written about. And now we come to these concluding words. And the first 7 verses really still talk about empathy, but in an expressed outlet in our everyday interactions with other people and different types of relationship statuses. So here's what I mean. Check this out. It says, keep on loving each other as brothers and sisters. Well, how do you keep on loving each other? Well, part of that love is empathy. It's understanding and trying to understand our brothers and sisters and trying to step into their lives, and people step into our lives, and so that we would have like a mutual understanding with each other. Keep on loving each other as brothers and sisters. Don't forget to show hospitality to strangers. For some of you have done this and you've entertained angels without even realizing it. Like that's a whole nother, I guess, early word devotion, right? Like that there's something to be said about there are angels among us, that God has maybe some celestial beings that reflect or look like humans. I don't know but by you showing hospitality, by you expressing kindness, by you expressing generosity, by you lending a helpful hand or maybe giving a handout, whatever it might be, it says keep on showing hospitality to strangers, because a lot of those strangers, they're humans, right? They're flesh and blood, but you never know. Maybe you're entertaining an angel. I don't know. But by showing hospitality and considering somebody else, there's still empathy, right? A lot of times hospitality comes by saying, oh, I would love to help you, or, oh, I would love to host you. I would love to do something for you. There is an empathy there. And as I engage by maybe providing a meal, or I open up my home and have you over, or I take time to sit across the table and have coffee and whatever, I'm going to listen and I'm going to engage in your life a little bit. And that empathy is attractive. So keep on doing it. Don't forget to show hospitality to strangers. Verse 3 says, and remember those who are in prison as if you yourself were there. Remember also those being mistreated as if you felt their pain in your own bodies. I mean, this really is the quintessential aspect of empathy. Like, remember those in prison, but remember them as if you were there. Like if that were you, or the pain that they're feeling, perhaps the guilt that they're experiencing, perhaps the remorse of the decisions that they made. It's not saying to, throw justice out the window, or even that they shouldn't be in prison. It just says to remember them and to remember, like, have empathy, pray for those individuals, maybe go visit those people because they're still people. And if you were there, or perhaps you had done something that you deeply regret, but that's the consequence of it, there's still a part of saying, I'm still in existence. And so how can you remember those? And ultimately says, and feel their pain as if it's in your own body. I saw Matt Heinerses was jumping in, and that's his whole thing. And I love that. It's so important for individuals to first understand their own pain so that we can, erupt purpose from that, understand how we can work through it. But also, the more we understand the pain of other people, it helps us have empathy and builds bridges and also develops greater purpose for that person and even for your own life. Verse 4 says, give honor to marriage and remain faithful to one another in marriage. God will surely judge people who are immoral and those who commit adultery. There is a direct application as far as faithfulness, and don't go being with someone you're not married to, right? There's that. But one of the ways in which marriages stay solidified and healthy and flourishing is when empathy is prevalent, right? When I put myself in the shoes or in the life of my wife, Jamie, and Jamie does likewise for me, that as I do that and I feel her life and she feels my life, and together we are empathizing with one another and there for each other, I I'm not I'm not near as prone to want to have a wondering eye, because we're deeply bonded and connected in ways. To step into my wife's life and to understand what she is feeling, what she's going through, right? Like, I'm here at work talking on a screen for the early word, but my wife right now is getting kids ready to take them to a homeschool enrichment center, right? And she's trying to do the hustle and the bustle and get 4 kids out the door and stuff like that. So when I come home today and I'm just like, man, I had a hard day, or man, my day wasn't that bad, I need to also listen to her and say, man, that probably was difficult to get 4 like kids that all have expressed opinions out the door and in order and pack lunches and all that kind of stuff. I'm understanding her, and it's bonding us because the human currency of empathy says, don't love money. Be satisfied with what you have. For God said, I will never fail you or never abandon you. Yes, there is an application here of like, where your treasure is, your heart is also. And do you love money more than anything else? But the way in which money becomes far less of a grip in your life is empathy towards other people, because then you want to gravitate your money towards those people and not just yourself. If the only person you have empathy for is yourself, of course you're going to love money, because the money is then going to serve you, because it can make you feel better or get what you want. But when you're putting yourself in a position of empathize with other people, then even your money is going to want to go places to help, or to celebrate, or to provide for, or to just be kind. It says so, and then in verse 7 it says, and then remember your leaders who taught you the word of God. Think of all the good that came from their lives and follow their example of their truth. The leaders, particularly pastoral leaders, to have empathy for the people that are trying to lead you and encourage you spiritually, as you try to understand that. Maybe try to understand me, like, hey, I'm just as much a person as anybody else. And I'm trying to figure out, what is God saying through this word? And yes, there are times I'm trying to figure this out to share in a current cultural moment. And this came out of a different cultural moment, and interpreting that and sharing that and trying to like understand there are differences in people. And every time you open your mouth, you have the chance of making someone excited, another person ticked off, right? Like, so have empathy for me or your leaders. Have empathy for school principals, healthcare administrators, right? For the president of the United States, your political officials. I mean, like, you don't have to have full agreement. But because the other person has flesh and blood, and you have flesh and blood, the same currency is going to rivet the soul, and that's empathy. So remember your leaders, pray for your leaders, help them. And I think if we can come to a place like our Savior Jesus, who was the actual embodiment, literally the embodiment of empathy, taking on flesh and dwelling amongst us, right? That's a magnetic aspect of Christ, right? It's like, he gets me, right? He's been through what I've been. He's been tempted in every way. He did not sin, but he gets what I'm tempted. Like, then why can't we do likewise with those around us, right? As followers of Christ, wanting to become little Christ, wanting to take on the character of Christ, let us not let our souls become hardened and lose empathy for one another. Let us be willing to be courageous, to step in someone else's shoes and journey a couple blocks or a couple miles or a couple days in their life so they understand them better. And yeah, it's kind of like, for example, let me just, I'll finish this. It's like the people at the airport, right? The women and men that work behind the ticket counters, and when flights get changed and then all hell breaks loose and the people just get mad at the people behind the ticket counter, they had nothing to do with it. They didn't cancel the flight, right? They didn't cancel the flight, but yet everybody just going ahead and just rips on them, rather than having empathy and being like, man, this must really stink for this person right now in this job, because they're having to try to communicate something to other people that they themselves didn't cause and they themselves wouldn't want to have happen to them, but they still have to nonetheless because it's their job. Empathy would change just the environmental, like emotional state in airports or grocery stores or driving in traffic, right? Or today here in California, like, golly, yes, I am so upset that we have to go back to wearing masks in places. And every employee at Target and every grocery store person, none of them signed up wanting to say, I'm going to be the mask police now. But now they have to because someone told them we need to wear the mask again. So today, have empathy for the people that might say, you need a mask on. And you're like, oh, I don't want to wear a mask. I've got the shots. I've done the things. I know what to do. I get it. But that's still a person. And so have empathy, right? And for the people who maybe on the other side of that debate, and you see someone not wanting to wear one, it's okay, understand that maybe they've complied and done everything that's been asked to be done, and we're still in the same situation, so they're frustrated. So but if we try to understand each other, it might propel us to love one another more, right? I see some friends of ours now in Idaho and Tennessee that are on the early word. You guys don't have to worry about that kind of stuff now because you're not in California. But anyway, apply it to your own particular context. Lean into the human, but ultimately the relational currency of empathy. So that's what I see here in the first 7 verses, chapter 13, early word. So appreciate you spending time with me. Ashley, good to have you on. Sydney, Sylvia, good to have you on. There's Chase and John and Robert and Mike and Laurel and Jessica. So yeah, God bless you all. Thanks for being on. And we'll pick up verse 8 tomorrow morning once again. All right. See you tomorrow.